الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I would like to um, start the lecture tonight, which, as Brother Musalla just mentioned, is another session on Imam Ali alayhi salam's letter to Malik al-Ashtar, the manifestation of Islamic governance, in the words of the commander of faith. I would like first to start with a very minor clarification regarding an inquiry question that we had at the end of the previous session. It was a very thoughtful question one of the brothers asked. If you remember, we talked about the concept of mashwara in Islam, because Imam alayhi salam approaches this concept in his letter and gives different advice to Malik on who to consult and who to not consult, and the importance of the topic. I addressed it in the previous session, so the significance and the specific attention that we find on the concept of mashwara consultation in Islamic teachings. Verses of Quran which names consulting others as one of the attributes of true believers. And I also mentioned hadiths from the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam that if you want to ask for Allah's help on a matter, instead of going for different ways of divination, so on and so forth, the best way to do that is to do mashwara, is to consult people of opinion and of faith, faithful people who are experienced, who can provide you with guidance. And the hadith said that when you do so, Allah will guide you through them. So the mashwara you receive from those trusted, wise people, it can be the same path that Allah wanted to guide you through, and He helped you through those people. He planned in a way that you get the guidance through the mashwara. Then one of the brothers asked a very good question, because we talked also about the Prophet himself, that also, although he is a prophet, although he is a divine messenger, although he has access to uh, uh, knowledge of unseen, so however, you see that even Allah asked the Prophet to consult his companions, people, وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ. Then I mentioned the example of the Battle of Uhud, which some of the historical accounts, they mentioned that the Prophet himself was on opinion that maybe defending, staying in Medina and defending would be a better option than going outside of the Medina and having a battle face to face. However, some other companions, they voiced their opinion that it would be better for us if we go out, and the Prophet, after consulting them, decided to act upon the consultation. So the question was that we know that the result of the battle was not what the Muslims hoped for. Actually, they were defeated. So isn't it somehow in contradiction with the hadith that we mentioned, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when you consult the faithful people, the wise people, the experienced people, Allah guides you through them? So how it came that after the mashwara, so the decision that the Muslims they made, and the Prophet actually went along, led to Muslim being defeated in the Battle of Uhud. I mentioned a response which is important to take into account, that As the verses of Quran talk about, the result of Battle of Uhud was meant also to be a divine trial for the Muslims. As the verses of Quran talk about, uh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to give Muslims a lesson that because you are believers, because uh, you are on the right path, it does not mean that you would not encounter difficulties in life, that you will win all the wars. تلك الأيام نداولها بين الناس. Some battles you win, some battle you lose. But what matters is if you do it for the right cause. And then we have in chapter Al Imran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says explicitly, وَمَا أَصَابَكُمْ يَوْمَ الْتَقَى الْجَمْعَانِ. What happened to you on the day of the Battle of Uhud? فَبِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ وَلِيَعْلَمَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَلِيَعْلَمَ الَّذِينَ نَافَقُوا. It was with Allah's permission. You lost, yes, you lost the battle, you were defeated, but it was not uh, outside, outside of Allah's knowledge. He knew that. There was a wisdom behind what happened there. Allah says it was for the true believers to be distinguished from the hypocrites, the ones who turned their back to the Prophet and they ran away, knowing that the Prophet's life is in danger, the Battle of Uhud. However, after the talk, I also remember that another important point that needs to be considered here, that although Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the result and the outcome of the Battle of Uhud as a divine trial for the Muslims, however, they were not necessarily going to lose if they were following the result of mashwara and consultation. Because the main reason that the Muslims lost the Battle of Uhud was the disobedience of the archers who were tasked of the protection of a way, um, uh, a mountain way behind, so the hillway behind the Muslims' army, which the Prophet and the companion knew that it can pose a very grave danger if they were being attacked from the back through this way. So, there were archers that were tasked to be there and protect uh, that path. However, after the initial uh, winning, sign of winning of the Muslims over the uh, uh, pagans' army, out of their uh, eagerness, out of their hope of getting war spoils, they disobeyed the Prophet's command. And that was, and then that was the same path that was used by the uh, um, army of the uh, pagans from the Mecca to attack Muslims from the back, and the outcome of the battle turned upside down. So we can say that it was if they were going by the consultation properly, they were not going to lose. Rather, what led to their defeat was their negligence of the Prophet's and the Prophet's advice and the command. Still, we need to uh, see the bigger picture. That when we are talking about the mashwara as the way for Allah to help us, to guide us, it doesn't mean that all instances of mashwara, every instance of mashwara is going to be accurate and uh, uh, not to be any mistake there. There are many people, there are many cases we consult people, they make mistakes, and that's possible. However, this is a path that Allah uh, asked us to follow, the path of consultation, which is the path of rationality, the path of us using the experience and the knowledge of the others and learning from them. Then the overall picture would be in our favor. We may, in some cases, encounter obstacles. In some cases, maybe the consultation would not be the best, but overall, it will turn out to our benefit. So it is the bigger picture that matters. As long as we follow the divine instruction, as long as we trust the people of faith and the wisdom and experience, the overall decisions that we make would be on the path of salvation, inshallah. So this is something that I thought that I need to uh, elaborate on before continuing the rest of the lecture. After the talk, after the uh, emphasis on the necessity of mashwara and consultation in Islamic teaching, when we look at the Imam alayhi salam's letter to Malik, Imam talks about the importance of picking the advisors, the ministers to the rule, the type of people that should be picked and the type of people should be avoided. Imam alayhi salam starts with warning and giving heads up to Malik that there are certain type of people that you should avoid having them as your advisors, having them as your ministers. So Imam alayhi salam says, "In sharra wazara'ika," indeed, the worst of your ministers, "man kana lil ashrar qablaka wazira," the ones who were ministers, were supporters of the wicked people before you. So Imam gives a very important advice. Do not use the same people who were involved in oppression, who were involved in violating other people's right, no matter the kind of experience and the kind of skills they have. Imam here tries to give Malik an overall picture of, because this is a very important matter. It is these advisors, these ministers are the ones that they are ruling, in fact, the country, a nation on the behalf of the ruler. A ruler cannot by himself do everything. That's why Imam gives this advice to Malik. And a part that I missed before, when Imam talks about the type of people that Malik should be careful about not consulting them. He mentions that ولا تدخلن في مشورتك بخيلا. There are three types of people that Imam alayhi salam says. These three types of people you need to avoid asking for the consultation. So beside uh, what I mentioned just now about not using the people who were involved in the oppression, who were involved with the previous corrupted rulers, which I will explain it later as Imam talks about it. He also mentions that there are three types of people, the three moral characteristics that if you see in someone, you should be avoided, should be a red flag for you, that these people cannot be trusted. ولا تدخلن في مشورتك بخيلا يعدل بك عن الفضل. Do not include in your counsel a miser, a stingy person who would turn you away from generosity ويعدك الفقر, and frighten you with poverty. This is a very interesting point when we look at the impact of a miser, a stingy advisor on the governance. Because this type of people, they discourage a ruler from spending on what is necessary for building the country, for infrastructure, for education, for welfare. So they consult the governor to withhold necessary public spendings out of the fear of future financial collapse, al-faqr, poverty. However, there are certain services like social services, like building infrastructure, that they are crucial in the development of a community. So the Imam says, do not rely on consultation of people who are by nature, they have this moral deficiency of being stingy. Because these people make a governor, they consult, make the governor paralyzed in its duties to the people, and the governor would fail his duties. It's interesting that we have a similar teaching in the word of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and he addresses Imam Ali alayhi salam. So you see the same line of teachings. You see the Prophet mentions it, then you see Imam Ali alayhi salam mentions the teaching. So it's Sheikh al-Saduq, he narrates it in al-Shara'i'. So the Prophet, peace be upon him, addresses the Imam Ali alayhi salam. قال رسول الله يا علي. So he gives some advice and says ولا تشاور البخيل بخيل, and do not consult a miser, a stingy person. فإنه يقصر بك عن غايتك, because he prevents you from reaching your goal. If you put it next to what Imam alayhi salam said, the justification that Imam alayhi salam mentioned, that because he prevents you from generosity, from spending what is necessary. And then the Prophet says, this will lead to your failure in reaching your goal. Because if the goal of a ruler is to serve the community, is to serve the people, is to lead the people to a brighter future, being stingy, being so much wary of poverty, so on and so forth, and not having the courage to spend on uh, crucial factors would lead to a ruler's failure in his duties. The second group that Imam alayhi salam says you have to avoid relying on their opinions and asking for their consultation. Imam says, وَلَا جَبَانًا يَضْعِفُكَ عَنِ الْأُمُورِ. Imam says, and do not consult a coward who would weaken you from taking action. This is also, I think, is very beautiful and very exactly on the spot kind of advice from Imam alayhi salam. Because there are many times that a ruler, a governor, need to take critical and difficult decisions when fighting corruption, when deciding to reform. In many cases, he has to confront many resistance. He has to confront difficulties. And if he doesn't have the courage to do that, he will fail. So Imam alayhi salam says, a coward will give you consultations to only pick the safest, most passive, least effective approach, which in long term would weaken your rule. And that's what Imam alayhi salam means by يَضْعِفُكَ عَنِ الْأُمُورِ. You would be weakened. You cannot do your job. And interestingly, again, in the hadith that I mentioned, that the Prophet, peace be upon him, addressed the similar concept to Imam alayhi salam. The Prophet says, يا علي لا تشاور جبانا فإنه يضيق عليك المخرج. Oh Ali, don't consult a coward, because they narrow down your ways out. So when you want to find makhraj, exit to certain difficulty, there are different solutions that you can pick. But a coward advisor would encourage you to dismiss many of the good options out of the fear that, for example, it may pose some risks. Imam says, do not rely on coward advisors. And the third type of people that Imam says, do not consult them is وَلَا حَرِيصًا يُزَيِّنُ لَكَ الشَّرَحَ بِالْجُورِ, nor a greedy person. Do not consult a greedy person who would beautify for you, decorate for you the uncontrolled longing and hunger for acquisition, for gaining wealth, for collecting wealth through unjust means. This is not only uh, immoral advice, rather, it can be seen as strategic advice. Because the Imam alayhi salam says that this type of people, the greedy people, the way that they do it, they will intellectually rationalize and justify corruption for you. They make a governor's own excessive desire seems like a necessity, and or even praiseworthy in the names of, for example, those security, stability, financial strength. So these people, they push the rulers to, for example, uh, impose heavy-handed taxation on the people, to seizure of wealth, so on and so forth. So Imam says these type of people these third type of people whom I will consider them the most dangerous type of advisors are the ones who push you towards corruption, but they whitewash it for you. They justify it for you. They show it in a way that you are convinced that this is the right thing to do. Then Imam alayhi salam says all these three characteristics that I'm warning you to be careful not to consult people who have them are the signs of lack of faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, lack of trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فإن البخل والجبن والحرص, for stinginess, cowardice, and greed, غرائز شتى, or diverse traits, يجمعها سوء الظن بالله, that all stems from lack of trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because if someone trusts in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, some would not be stingy. Because the one who is stingy is the one who fears that if he spends the right matters, he would be poor later on. He would lose. So it shows a lack of trust that Allah, who is provide for us, who is the true sustainer, is able to provide for me. So if I'm a stingy person, it tells clearly that I don't trust Allah to provide for me. The same goes with a coward, because a coward also fears that even if the decision is the right decision, if there is a risk involved, he doesn't trust Allah to protect him. Rather, he tries to avoid that solution all the way. And the same goes to someone who is greedy. Because someone who is greedy, who always long for something that he doesn't have, he doesn't trust Allah that whatever that Allah would provide for him whatever he needs. And if he doesn't, it means that it is not needed for him. It can bring harm to him. If I trust my Lord that he is the owner of everything, and he is kind enough to provide everything that I need. So I will trust him on the matter of what to provide and what not to provide. I will trust his wisdom. I will trust his compassion. I will trust his knowledge. So Imam says these three vices are the results of lack of trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't consult these people who don't trust their Lord. Then the same point that I mentioned at the beginning of my talk, Imam said, when you are going to pick your ministers, suppose that you are careful not to pick people who are stingy, people who are greedy, people who are cowards. Still, Imam says there is also another criteria here. Make sure that you do not take with you, do not trust the ones who were supporters of the corrupt and evil rulers before you. من كان للأشرار قبلك وزيرا ومن شاركهم في الآثام, and the ones who shared in their sins. فلا يكونن لك بطانة, do not let them be your inner circle. فإنهم أعوان الأئمة أعوان الأثمة وإخوان الظلمة, for they are helpers of sinners and brothers of oppressors. This is a very interesting point that Imam highlights here. First, from a moral perspective, Imam wants to say that one's actions are not in isolation from one's personality and morals. One who could stand indifferent to injustice, corruption, and tyranny, and even support it, reveals a dead conscience and corrupted moral compass. The very fact that these people stood by the side of corrupt rulers, supported them, didn't object their wrong practices, shows that they don't have the conscience, they don't have the moral compass to guide them. And Imam also later mentions a very important point, because in many cases, these people, these ministers, these advisors who were employed by the previous rulers, unjust rulers, oppressors, they are being invited again in new rules, in new governments, because of their experience, because of their skills. So in many cases, the new establishments, they justify that we need people of experience, and these people, they have enough experience. They know how to, for example, administrate financial resources, how to manage, for example, the court, so on and so forth. So the question is, what if these people are people of valuable experiences? They have the kind of skills that others they lack. Yes, he was a minister, for example, of economy to a corrupted ruler, and he went along with all his decisions, but he's very experienced. He knows his field. He has degrees in this. So isn't it wise to still use them, but at the same time control them, not to let them, for example, take advantage of their position? Imam al-Islam says, it's a very beautiful take. Imam al-Islam says, وَأَنْتَ وَاجِدٌ مِّنْهُمْ خَيْرَ الْخَلَفِ. Said, don't worry, you will find better successors. ممن له مثل آرائهم ونفاضهم, among them those who possess similar insights and effectiveness, skills. وليس عليهم مثل آثارهم وأوزارهم وآثارهم. Yet they are not burdened by their past failings, transgressions, and sins. ممن لم يعاون ظالما على ظلمه ولا آثما على إثمه. The ones who never assisted an oppressor in their tyranny, nor a sinner in their wrongdoings. Moses says, don't worry. The world is vast enough. There are enough people there, even if you don't know them. As long as you look for them, you find people with similar experiences, similar skills, but not to be touched by those moral vices, deficiencies. So Imam alayhi salam says it's to look for new talents with righteousness instead of relying on talents with corrupted moral compass. There are historical examples that shows why Imam is uh, giving this heads up to Malik, because later on we have in the history of uh, early Islamic rule, although the same matter applies to many other countries, many other nations, still you see it's relevant. It happens again and again. But you see it clearly in cases appeared after the time of Imam alayhi salam. For example, there were cases in the early Islamic history, for example, during the Abbasid periods, that it was a recurring pattern that a wicked or corrupted minister or court official was dismissed, and even their assets were confiscated because of their uh, corruption, only to be reappointed later by the new faction because of the same mentality. These people, they possess the administrative experience, they possess the skills, they know how to do it. One example is the example of Fazl ibn Rabi', who was a very experienced and highly skilled minister, and in he had very exceptional institutional knowledge that uh, the Abbasid caliphs, they saw it as vital for the maintaining the rule. So he served Harun Rashid and had a great authority at the time of Harun. Later on, after the Harun's death, when Amin, the first son of the Harun, became caliph, he was so this Fazl ibn Rabi was the chief advisor of the new caliph in Baghdad, and it was him whose counsel persuaded Amin to disinherit his brother Ma'mun, which led to triggered the devastating civil war afterward, which led to uh, 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 Amin being killed. But then, after Ma'mun comes to power and Rabi runs away and he hides, he fleds and going into hiding. After a time, Ma'mun uh, excuses him and again appoints him as one of his influential court officials. Why? The same kind of justification, because he was very experienced, he was very skilled, and Ma'mun needed someone to understand the how the court works and so on and so forth, and he decided to uh, employ Fadl ibn Rabi once again. However, as you see, Imam alayhi salam warns against this approach. Eh, because using this type of people who were used with corruption, it means that these people will continue taking advantage of people. These people, they can even become so boldened to ignore the uh, the rulers' opinions or even take control of them. What happened at the time of the Mu'tasam? So some historical accounts they talk about. So at the time, it was the case that the military, the Turkish military, had the power over the caliph, and some ministers they were dictating what should be done and what shouldn't be done. And there are so many uh, accounts of those the corruption, the extent of the corruptions of the viziers, of the ministers, and the military leaders, and how they took advantage of the people, those heavy-handed taxation on poor people just for their own benefits. So Imam says, avoid having these people around you. Don't worry. There are people skilled enough, but pure and righteous enough to guide you. And Imam explains the benefit of trusting a righteous circle around the ruler. Imam says, أولئك أخف عليك مؤونة. They are less of a burden on you. وأحسن لك معونة. They are better at offering assistance to you. وأحنى عليك أتفا. They are more compassionate towards you. They are not just used of serving others and taking advantage of serving for their own uh, benefits. These people, righteous people, if they accept to help you, they assist you, they do it sincerely. They care for you. وَأَقَلُّ لِغَيْرِكَ إِلَفًا. They are less inclined to befriend others, your enemies. فَاتَّخِذْ أُولَٰئِكَ خَاصَّةً لِخَلَوَاتِكَ وَحَفَلَاتِكَ. So therefore, make these individuals, they are the ones who are righteous. They are the ones who were not involved in the corruption and the wrong deeds of the previous rulers. Make them your trusted companions for both your private moments and public gatherings. And then Imam says, among these ministers that you pick, the ones who are away from those moral vices we mentioned, they are not stingy, they are not greedy, they are not cowards, they are not tainted, they are not involved with the transgression and the uh, uh, corruption of the previous rulers. Among them, still you can pick the ones who are more trusted, who are more beneficial to you. ثم ليكن آثرهم عندك. So then let those most favored by you be the ones who أقولهم بمر الحق لك. First, the ones who speak the bitter truth to you most readily. It's very beautiful. Imam says, among all the advisors, the righteous ones, pick, so put your highest level of trust in the ones who have this courage, who have this sincerity to speak truth when it's the bitter, when it hurts. Keep them close to you because they are the ones who truly care for the people, who truly care for the community. This reminds me of the hadith of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, the famous hadith. أحب إخواني إلي من أحدى إلي عيوبي. The best of my friends are the ones who give to me my flaws. They are the ones who are caring for me. They are the ones who help me grow, improve, address my flaws, shortcomings. And one says first, so put your highest trust in the ones who are so straightforward, speak truth to you, even if it's bitter, even if it hurts. And then وأقلهم مساعدة فيما يكون منك مما كره الله لأوليائه واقعا ذلك من حواك حيث وقع. And the ones who are less willing to assist you in the matters that Allah dislikes for His close servants, regardless of your personal desires on such matters. So keep those advisors close to you, that when you make a wrong decision, when you follow your desires, they don't just flatter you, they don't just encourage you, just hoping that you will be satisfied with them, giving them more and more so they can maintain their position. Rather, they are the ones who are not going to abide. They are going to avoid, resist. And Imam alayhi salam says, وَأَلْصِقْ بِأَحْلِ الْوَرَعِ وَالصِّدْقِ. Then stick close to the people of piety and truthfulness. Keep close to yourself those truthful people who are not afraid to let you know your flaws, your mistakes. And this is a very crucial advice for governance, because it is not difficult to see throughout the history that many tyrants, many corrupt leaders, they were the ones who were also supported and encouraged with their inner circles, who prevented prevented themselves, who refrained from giving the honest and truthful advice to the rulers. As long as a ruler was going to satisfy their desires, they were going along with it without any objection. Then Imam alayhi salam is very beautiful. Imam says, then the next step, after you picked those best advisors to you, best ministers to you, who are free from those moral vices, who are not involved with the corruption of the previous leaders, who have the courage to tell you the truth, no matter what, even if it hurts. Then ثم رضهم على أن لا يطروك ولا يبجحوك بباطل لم تفعله. Then convince them not to praise you excessively or to flatter you falsely for things you haven't done. Because this is unfortunately a very popular practice. People who want to remain around influential and powerful figures, they use flattery as a mean to solidify their position. Imam says, these are humans. They are not immune from making the same mistakes. So after you found them to be righteous people, make sure you clarify for them the expectations so they don't lose the path. Make sure you convince them that they shouldn't try to praise you excessively, to flatter you. Imam says, because فإن كثرة الإطراء تحدث الزحو وتدني من العزة. Because Imam says there is a very grave causality, negative consequence for this practice if you don't block it. Indeed, excessive praise breeds arrogance and diminishes true dignity. A ruler who has been always praised by his inner circle, no matter what, becomes arrogant, becomes self-centered, becomes prideful. Then then he can't see his mistakes. He becomes blinded by this arrogance, So Imam says, be careful to teach, train, and convince your advisors to not cross the line because it would hurt them and hurt you. They would lose their pious and righteous characteristic eventually, and you will be blinded by arrogance and pride because of their excessive praise of you. These are very beautiful and powerful advice, as we can see. Imam Islam gives Malik about how to pick his advisors, his ministers, and how to train them, how to clarify his expectations for them. The next point that Imam highlights in his letter to Malik is Imam explains the expectation from a ruler on how to treat people justly. So whether they are good or bad, evil or good doers, evil doers or good doers. Imam highlights here in his advice the harm of uniform treatment rather than a kind of suited and just response. Imam alayhi salam says, وَلَا يَكُونَنَّ الْمُحْسِنُ وَالْمُسِيءُ عِنْدَكَ بِمَنْزَلَةِ سَوَاءٍ. The righteous and the wrongdoer must not be held in equal standing with you. فإن في ذلك تزهيدا لأهل الإحسان في الإحسان. Because if you treat the wrongdoers and good doers similarly, you discourage the people of virtue from virtuous deeds. وتدريبا لأهل الإساءة على الإساءة. And you train the people of vice in committing misdeeds. Because when they see the good people, they see no matter what good they do, still they're treated the same way as those corrupted people. Those corrupted people, they use different means for their personal gains. They collect wealth. They are having a much better life. And I, for example, I try to be a righteous person. I try to uh, go by law, but I get the same treatment by the ruler in whom I put my trust. That can be very discouraging. That can eventually lead to my mistakes similarly. So if it doesn't matter for the ruler whom I trust, which approach I take, so why should I put with all these difficulties when others they don't? Someone says, be careful not to treat them equally. And Imam continues, وَأَلْزِمْ كُلًّا مِّنْهُمْ مَا أَلْزَمَ نَفْسَهُ. And then hold each one of them accountable for that which they have held themselves to. So hold them accountable for the actions, the intentions. The one who serves people, who does good deeds, rewards them. The ones who betray people, the ones who misuse their power, punish them. Hold them accountable for whatever they do. It's very interesting, this emphasis that Imam says that you shouldn't treat these people equally. You should distinguish between good and bad and reward and punish accordingly. This is what we see, is this spirit that we see in the verses of Quran as well. For example, it's in chapter Jasiyah, verse 21. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَمْ حَسِبَ الَّذِينَ اشْتَرَحُوا السَّيِّئَاتِ. Do those who commit evil deeds think أَن نَجْعَلَهُمْ كَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Do they think that we will make them like those who believe and do righteous deeds? سواء محياهم ومماتهم, in their life and in their death. ساء ما يحكمون. How wrong is the judgment they make. Absolutely, they will be different. They will treat it differently. Imam Salam says, as a governor, as a ruler, that's a very crucial policy that your people should witness that you reward the good doers and punish the bad doers. You should make it clear for them. They should trust your judgment. Then Imam alayhi salam talks about another important factor, which I'm just touching, just introducing the talk for inshallah next session as the time is running out. It's about treatment of people and how a ruler ought to build a mutual bond of trust between people and the rule. Imam talks about the kind of measures that a ruler can take, can employ to build this bridge of trust between him and people. And Imam explained why building this bridge and maintaining this bridge is vital for the rule. So Imam overall says that for you to be a successful ruler, for you to avoid many of the pitfalls, many of the difficulties, many of the unnecessary costs, the best way is to build a strong and solid bond of mutual trust between you and your people. You trust them and they trust you. And that's what Imam al-Islam explains in his words and elaborates on the approaches that he expects Malik to follow, which inshallah I will cover them in the next session. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the blessing to benefit from the knowledge of Ahlul Bayt, especially from these beautiful teachings of Imam Ali alayhi salam in this astonishing letter as the manifestation of governance according to the school of Ahlul Bayt, and hopefully we follow them, we follow the steps in our daily life, inshallah. Recite the salawat.